I call David Seymour, 5 minutes.
Mr Speaker, I rise on behalf of the ACT Party in support of this bill and as somebody who believes the history of New Zealand, our country, is in fact a history of immigration. And I can't help but respond to some of the comments made earlier by members of New Zealand First that some of this exploitation is being done by their own people. What exactly does that mean? I'd love them to give an explanation of that someday, but it seems to give an insight into the way that they think. They seem to believe that immigration is a threat to our jobs. Well, I'll tell you something apart from the offensiveness of the pronouns they use. The fact is that New Zealand, once upon a time, had no people, no immigration and no jobs. We've had 1,000 years of immigration and now we have lots of jobs. QED, immigration is actually good for jobs. But I'd like to get back to a particularly poignant experience. I had cause over the past week to spend a lot of time in the Northland base hospital in honour of my unfortunately late grandfather, Joe Faithfull. And the ward that he was on was peopled almost entirely by people who are recent immigrants to our country. And there's a lesson in that for some of the elderly members of New Zealand First. Be very careful what you say about immigrants, because it might not be too long before they're giving one of you a sponge bath. In particular, I want to get back to what Jan Logie was referencing, and that is section 277B, Bravo, and C, Charlie. Those two clauses, I would like to thank the Minister, and I have to say I find him a very hard-working, professional and listening Minister, Michael Woodhouse, who was prepared to take on board concerns about the idea that an immigration officer would be able to go into not only a business, but a private residence connected to a business, perhaps a dairy or restaurant in my electorate, and ask any questions they wanted to ask and search for any documents they wished to search for without a warrant. We would not give that power to the police, and I made it clear that ACT's preference is that we would not have such provisions. However, it was clear the government was determined to have them. And so I'd like to thank the Minister for being considerate enough to insert additional clauses such that the provisions of search that this bill introduces will actually be subject to greater democratic oversight. That is, that there will be frequent or periodic reporting of the use of what I regard as extraordinary powers, and that after 3 years the clauses in this bill which introduce them will be required to face ministerial review. Mr Speaker, we are a nation of immigrants. It is not about us and them and our own people and their own people. This is a country that is great because so many people freely come here to access, first and foremost, due process and the rule of law. I do not believe that this bill is perfect in that regard, but I'm pleased to have been able to play a very small role in improving it, and so I will commend this bill to the House and we will be supporting it. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Dr.